Welcome back, everybody. Let's get into our first interview of the morning. ANC National Chairperson Gwede Mantashe says despite the challenges faced by the ANC, its National Executive Committee, or NEC, will not be disbanded. Mantashe was responding to a document submitted by military veterans led by General Mojo Motau, raising concerns about the direction of the ANC and the country, including a suggestion that the NEC be disbanded and replaced by a task team. Notably, for more than a decade, the ANC has faced challenges, whether it's ANC or MK veterans, the youth and the women's leagues, or tales of possible coups or wrangling of internal factionalism. Over these last few years, we've seen it. Now, the fight for control of the party and the power struggle just intensifies. Political analyst Sabelo Chalufu joins us now to discuss this issue and more. Good to have you. Thanks, Sabelo, for being our guest.
Morning, Leah, and morning to the viewers. Thank you.
So, from Motau and other retired military officials, is it a legitimate call to ask for a disbandment of the ANC's national executive?
I don't think so. I'm not convinced that it's a legitimate call. And my reasons for not agreeing with that is that, look, many of the things that are stated in their report and, in some of their comments about the report are things that are not particularly new in the ANC's, internal struggles. They complain, for instance, about a neoliberal shift in how the ANC manages the economy. But that's nothing particularly new. I mean, we have a history of how the ANC has managed the economy, even from the times of the 1996 class project. At all times, the management of the economy has had a liberal / communist, not communist rather, a socialist kind of, a bent to it. And even in terms of just its own other internal wranglings between the factions, they have been there and have existed even since before the times of democracy. So it's nothing new, and frankly, it would not be constitutional anyway. The only way that they could get a new NEC in place would be, for instance, at the National General Council to then motion for an early conference to be held, an early elective conference to be held, and that's where I think they are trying to get to in actual fact.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because when we look at the NGC and what's happened during COVID, there's great fears of what is going to happen, because if in fact it does go ahead, it'll only be in 2022, and what happens between then and now could be quite dangerous. So, I mean, the reality is that exactly what you're saying is perhaps bringing that NGC forward.
Yes, indeed. And the difficulty for the ANC, and especially the ANC of President Ramaphosa, is that they have positioned his ANC as being an ANC different to the ANC that we have known to exist since the dawn of democracy. The difficulty for him and many of his advisors and associates is that, in fact, he took the ANC by a slim majority, and in fact, even in the NEC itself, it is split almost down the middle. You still have many people who align themselves with the Jacob Zuma, the RET type of gang, and so at this point, there's nothing particularly new about this ANC. And in fact, what has been the case is that it's been an ANC managed through PR.
So, knowing what happened before and during December 2017's ANC elective conference, talk to us about the NEC that came out of that particular conference. How has that executive fared in managing the organization and these disputes that we're seeing?
So, as I just said, that NEC that came out of that conference is an NEC that is the result of internal factional battling. You could call it somewhat of a compromise NEC. And this is exemplified by the fact that you still have on that same NEC people like the likes of Kikawa, people like the likes of Mokonyan. And what the ANC has done over the years and what the ANC has needed over the years in order to attempt to manage itself has been power. Absent power, the ANC struggles to manage itself, because what it can do when it has power is to dish out, tenders to associates to certain factions. They can dish out positions to certain factions, and where they are squeezed of such power, where they do not have such power, the ANC has tended to collapse. I mean, a classic example of that would be a case such as the one in the Western Cape, where the ANC has been out of power provincially and in the Cape Town metro specifically for a number of years. And ever since around about that time, the ANC has not been able not only to keep itself together, but to also be able to move as one unit and take power from the DA. So insofar as this NEC, it's pretty much the same kind of thing. You still find people who are you still find the ANC and its functionaries in government dishing out this or that to the varying factions just to try and keep itself together. And increasingly, that is proving difficult. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, even in areas where it is in power, it is proving difficult to manage that and manage it properly, given the fact that we have a separation of party and state, and given the fact that the voters on the ground are asking and demanding that be respected. In a province such as Gauteng as well, you have exactly that same problem, where right now, many of the moves by the provincial leadership in how it manages itself are exemplifying of the fact that it is trying to reduce the harm to the party that has been caused by issues such as the COVID corruption.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned factionalism, and this is a big issue within the ANC. I mean, it's been entrenched, and most of the dissent happens towards the elective conferences, as we discussed, over delegates' lists and credentials. And while it could be normal to have such disputes, the period before the ANC's elective conference seems to be even more ruthless, littered with numerous court cases. At the moment, we are seeing the ANC marching against the ANC and members. I mean, whether we're talking about the veterans, whether we're talking about those in support of Ace Magashule, those that are against PRASA, those that, I mean, we see this all the time. Is it possible for the party to turn around at this stage where that factionalism seems so deeply entrenched within it?
I don't think so. In fact, I don't think, like I just said, I don't think that the ANC would be able to keep itself together if it didn't have power. And the fact of the matter is, as you mentioned, the heaviest contestation arises in actually two circumstances. One is in the lead up to its own elective conference, and secondly, it's in the lead up to any election around the country, be it local government or be it national and provincial, where there is at stake the potential for one to be deployed into any role. Where there is that at stake, there will always be contestation between the party and internally. And so, absent that power base, the ANC struggles to manage itself.
Talking about a couple of splinter groups that have actually left the ANC to establish their own parties, such as we've seen it from the PAC to COPE to the EFF. I mean, we could also obviously right at the beginning add the UDM into that as well. What is your observation of those parties? I mean, we look at the EFF, and that has, if we can say, possibly been the most successful in terms of the breakaways. But what do you make of them? I mean, could we start seeing more of these developing before elections?
Look, it's always a possibility. And in fact, the elections over the last few, the national elections, that is, over the last few runs, excluding 2019, have almost always led to some splinter. And as you rightly point out, of all of the splinters that have come out of the ANC, the EFF is the one that has been able to keep itself together for a lot longer. More often than not, the parties will split, the faction will split out of the ANC for whatever reasons they might have. for leaving the ANC. So they would leave the ANC, and then at the national election would get around about 10% of the vote, and then quickly thereafter, in successive elections thereafter, then collapse. And out of all of the lot, the EFF is the only one that has been able to keep itself together still after that. And the fact is that more often than not, the issues that cause them to leave, it's got to do with how they have been treated within the ANC. And then those particular persons seeing an opportunity outside of the ANC, thinking that they will be able to get a sizable chunk. And in actual fact, the way in which the ANC's majority has declined over the years has a direct relationship with the rise of these splinter parties. It is these splinter parties that have made probably the most impact in reducing the ANC's performance over the years. Yes, the other opposition parties who have no relationship with the ANC or have had no relationship or history with the ANC have also done their work. But it's the ones who have been most effective at reducing the ANC's majority has been these splinter parties.
The power struggle and the fight for control, it truly does keep on moving up a notch. We're seeing this all the time. My question to you is, what is the end game? Is it a fight for a better South Africa, or is it simply that ultimate prize, which would be to be even closer to the country's resources and influence and continue on this almost looting our resources and carrying on to enrich just those certain few? What is the end game?
I wager that it's the latter of the two options that you've proposed. The fact is that the ANC is the strongest and gets the highest number of votes in areas which are overwhelmingly rural. And in those areas, these are also the same areas with the least development. If you consider in terms of just basic services, if you consider in terms of the development of the jurisdictional area, of schools, of roads, of all those things, it's these areas in which the ANC actually gets the highest number of votes. You consider various municipalities around the country, various rural municipalities around the country, in Mpumalanga, in the Northwest, in Limpopo, and the like. That's where the ANC gets its highest numbers. And so in those areas where it has control, a strong grip of control, these are also those areas, like I say, that are least developed. So it clearly indicates that even in areas where, especially in areas where it is the strongest, these areas do not, in fact, benefit. So the people then who do benefit in those areas are the people that are closely aligned with the ANC, be they business people, be they politicians themselves. It's not for the benefit of South Africans in those areas. And so the end game, as I see it, it's rather for access to the keys to the vault instead of being for the benefit of South Africans.
Just very quickly, Sabelo, a quick, almost wrapping up here. I mean, if we look back to 2005, Professor William Gumede wrote a book, Thabo Mbeki and the Battle for the Soul of the ANC. I mean, a really interesting read, basically depicting the internal factionalism, which shows that nothing much has changed, and the challenges facing Mbeki and the ANC at the time. Let's look at the incumbent president now, President Cyril Ramaphosa. What has he done in uniting the ANC? Has he done a good job? Has he, in a way, succeeded better than former President Thabo Mbeki and former President Jacob Zuma? What do you think? Has he done a good job or not? So
some have said that the president has a choice to make between whether he goes for the internal unity of the ANC or for the betterment of South Africa. And he has gone on record himself, in fact, on this very channel, and said that what he wants is the unity of the ANC. That is his primary aim. His aim is to manage the unity of the ANC. And to an extent, you would you would want to think that he has been able to successfully manage that. But given the groundswell of anti-Ramaphosa sentiment amongst within the other faction of the ANC, you clearly can see that he's not in fact succeeding as much as he would want. And so instead of fighting the battles internally, which he is losing, he then goes outside to the country and communicates his letter to the ANC, to the country instead. So that as a country, we can look at him and think that, oh no, he's definitely fighting the battles internally. But the big problem for him is that why does he feel the need to then take his internal battle outside of the party? He should be keeping it internally. He should be managing it internally. Given the fact that he has appointed many people who are still from the other faction, it shows you that he is attempting to manage this, but his management of this factional battle within the party is to the detriment of South Africans.
Sabelo, wrap this up for us. Last question, 30 seconds if you can. It's an ANC that is 108 years old. I mean, despite all the scandals, it still has a substantive following. What does the party have to offer to South Africans today? If, we talk about all of these scandals, yet people still vote for them, what can they do to help?
So the primary thing that the ANC offers South Africans is a link to a somewhat glorious past, which is to its struggle credentials. That is the only thing that it has left in its arsenal. Any other offer that it has attempted to make, the ANC itself has worked against that offer. So there's nothing else that the ANC has to offer South Africans, and South Africans have to look for alternatives outside of the ANC. And in those areas where South Africans have shown the ANC that we don't want you, we want an alternative, those areas right now are the areas that the ANC is most concerned about, and the areas right now that the ANC is most interested in attempting to convince the people. I'm not convinced that they will be able to convince them, but 2021 will be the decider.
It certainly will be a telling year. Sabelo Chalufu, thank you very, very much for talking to us about the ANC challenges following a recent call by retired General Mojo Motau and his fellow military veterans suggesting a disbandment of the current ANC, NEC and other issues affecting the ruling party. All right, 7 o'clock. Let's get your latest news. Sakina is standing by.